Well, nothing, no pressure except self-imposed pressure.
Well, you have control over that, I suppose.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, I do. I created the deadlines for myself, but I met my deadlines, so.
Yeah, you created the deadlines, but did you do that? Or is it just the illusion of, what's the word? The illusion of free will?
One of these days we'll find out.
Maybe not. Maybe we can ask a AI agent, a ChatGPT.
We could ask it now and see what it says. Just whether or not the answer is correct will be a whole nother thing.
See, it's funny. Yeah, we could. Well, see, the answer is only based on human input. Well, I say that, but then I also don't know if I don't know if it's doing any synthesis of its own. So it's like I was thinking about it. It's like calculators are so much faster at complex math than any human will ever be able to do. Like we'll never be able to meet the power of the simplest calculator doing the most complex math that it can do. We'll never be that fast. And these GPTs are kind of the same thing. It's all based on human knowledge, whether it's correct or incorrect, and they're just so much faster at synthesizing it. So much faster at providing, for the most part, coherent responses to questions that we ask and prompts that we give it. But it's all based on human knowledge. I don't know that it's. Do you know if there are any AI software that is synthesizing new information?
Not sure.
Well, I guess it is. I guess that's what vibe coding is, right?
Well, it's kind of the premise of AI anyway, right? So it depends on how granular you want to get with what does it mean to synthesize new information.
Right.
And you could say the same thing with human information as discoveries are made or as papers are written, and whether it's really creating new information or just supporting or updating some understanding about something else.
I mean, it's discovering. I think there is some. There is. So I think you could take art and say maybe that's a creation of new things that don't exist. So this is, it gets fuzzy and gray. So,
but it's also, I don't know that you could have any level of aggregation and summarization conversationally without it being able to, off the cuff, at least add to existing information. Maybe not add in a way of like research level data set, but
create new but not build upon.
Yeah.
Create the same, create more of what's existing, but not necessarily. So, I mean, but I think the idea, the expectation is that it's going to be building upon at some point.
Well, I think you could already do that outside of the GPT models. You can leverage AI in other ways. It's just that what we're thinking of as the kind of consumer-facing AI components, those are not designed to do any kind of like additive research.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that AI is not involved in doing that in other forms.
Well, that's why I was thinking that maybe like the sort of tools that are being used for code generation is it added? I guess maybe I don't know.
It's still trained on the definitions of what's available. I mean, it's the same principle. You analyze enough code and you can generate new or different works based on the same premise.
Right, but it's not creating new languages.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's a fairly acceptable line to, well, at least in 100% of this conversation, I think we can both accept that as the difference between more of the same and building on.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a general status check for where things are for public-facing tools. And I think it's easier just to make that delineation because even I have no clue what all is available in like the research and R&D spheres.
Right, because that's not where you are right now.
Yeah.
We both had. I think we both were thinking the same thing or similar things regarding some follow up from last show.
Yeah, I was actually, when I was editing, I put the thought in. So it's been sitting there for a week, almost a week at this point. So it's funny that you thought about it as well.
I've been thinking about it on and off over the course of the week, and I listened to our last episode today, and I was like, okay, I need to, I want to stay on this and at it, because I was just thinking about it, because we were talking about it and I was thinking about it. And so it was funny for me when I was listening to the episode, because I can't, like, I don't remember finding definitively that Kyle Reese was John Connor's father until after the show, but maybe I must have found something, because I started talking like, oh, they definitely say it in the first movie. And I know after it was over, I went and found the clip and sent you the sound that made it to the show, and I was like, now I can't exactly remember what I found in text while we were doing real time follow up, versus what I found right after. So because what I found right after was definitely definitive in my head about what it was. Anyway, it fit really well. I was thinking, oh, you did a really good job editing that in. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
But yeah, so I did some more looking, and because I was like, would we consider the paradox that you have in Back to the Future the same as the paradox that you have in the Terminator? And so I used my friend ChatGPT to ask that, and not exactly. So they described the paradox in the Terminator as a bootstrap paradox. The issue is something exists without a clear point of origin because it's passed in a time loop. That being John Connor sending Kyle Reese back to protect Sarah Connor, and then Kyle and Sarah, make a baby, which is John. That means John is essentially responsible for his own existence. So they call it the bootstrap paradox. And another example they gave is if a time traveler went to Shakespeare and gave Shakespeare his plays, how could he become famous for and he then becomes famous for publishing those plays? Where did the plays originally come from? So that's the paradox.
Yeah, and just to add on to it real quick, so the piece that I had thought about that you referenced was that the only way the Terminator series works is if time travel creates an additional timeline.
Right.
And so by the time you get to the one that we see in the movie where Kyle Reese is sent back and is also John's father, is already at least one universe removed or one timeline removed from the original timeline.
Right. So it's either that, or you have to accept that there's a paradox and allow your suspension of, allow for the suspension of disbelief, because that's kind of like what Back to the Future has. It's a grandfather paradox. So that being, if you travel back in time and prevent your own existence by killing your grandfather before your parents are conceived, then you would never be able to go back in time to do it in the first place. So in the case of Marty McFly, he stops his parent. If he stops his parents from meeting, he'll never be born. Then he can't exist to go back in 1955 to prevent his parents from meeting. So
yeah, that one at least seems cleaner.
Yeah.
But I think it's only because we can make that mental leap easier than we can make the one where there's an obvious disconnect between existence and it has to create a parallel or alternative time.
Right. So ChatGPT said, hey, there are some physicists consider the following resolutions. One, the branching timelines or many worlds. Like we've been talking about, when Marty goes back, he creates a new timeline where his parents meet differently. His original timeline still exists, but he's no longer in it. And that's kind of what happens, because when he goes back to the future, it's a different 1985. We said, I guess what's inferred is that it's the only 1985 and that it's just different because the events of 1955 affect that 1985, and the 1985 that he came from, that he remembers, doesn't exist. But I guess that becomes problematic, because then he would have grown up in the and the 1985 that we see at the end of the movie, not the 1985 that we see in the beginning of the movie. So it's still problematic. But the other resolution could be a fixed timeline, also called the Novikov self-consistency principle, where the past is immutable. You can't change it. Everything you do in the past was always part of history. And I guess that has some problems, because then it's like, how did 1985 Marty end up in 1955 if 1985 Marty always existed in 1985? Until you consider that time doesn't move in a linear fashion, and then there are slices of space-time, and you can travel through them, and what is will always be what is always going to be, what was always was, and what will be always will be the same, and there's no changing it, and time isn't something that's moving, and we only perceive it that way. If you'd like to know more about that, check out an episode of Nova from, I don't know, 15 years ago, called The Illusion of Time. Really good episode of Nova.
It feels like that's still too deterministic, or too rigid in thought, maybe, is the way I would describe it instead. Because it still sounds like there's this, with either of the, really any of the latter examples, there's still this rigid concept of something has to exist in the space it exists, without taking into account that it could potentially travel through. Well, no, then we're just back to one of my other statements where we might consider time differently as we learn more about it.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I did watch this episode of Nova, and I have the full name. It's season 38, episode 17, from November 9th, 2011, The Fabric of the Cosmos, The Illusion of Time. And it basically, it's dense enough for me that, like, I understood it the whole way through. I didn't need any explanation or to, like, look up additional things to understand everything that was discussed in the episode. But I would probably have to watch this episode like half a dozen times to be able to start discussing, repeating what's said in it. It's too much for me to have gotten it all. I can't get it all. I can't say it all. I can't sit here and start talking about the episode and describe what's discussed by Brian Greene and other physicists. But it's really good, and it just really sort of makes me understand that our perception of time is not realistic, or it's very,
very rudimentary.
Yeah, it's kind of like I was talking to Jude about this tonight. I was talking about some things that are scary about the ocean, or underwater and so forth, and I was saying, for all intents and purposes, we, as humans, or maybe all terrestrial animals, with the exception of birds, kind of live a two-dimensional life, in the sense that we don't really move along our z-axis. Well, I don't know if you would consider it the z-axis. Maybe it's considered the y-axis. We got into that as well. What to expect from that. And anyway, point being is, we stay on the surface of the Earth. Now, we change our elevation, we get in an airplane, but for all intents and purposes, we're not really changing our elevation the way we change latitude and longitude. Whereas most sea creatures, ocean-dwelling animals, they do live very three-dimensional lives. It is very much a part. And it's not that they take up the whole of the three-dimensionality that they can because of pressure, and certain animals don't come up too higher. It's a certain, they don't come up above a certain depth, and certain animals don't go below a certain depth, but they do live a more they realize their three-dimensional life is more realized than ours is. Maybe that's a way of saying it. That was sort of me trying to give a paradigm shift for maybe how we don't actually fully understand our perception of time.
Yeah, it was an interesting thought. I was just trying to figure out if there was anything that it would really have as a response to it. I mean, we can certainly understand the same three dimensions well enough, even though we don't traverse them the same way.
Right.
But
whereas we don't quite understand time as well as we understand.
Right. Because we don't even have a concept of manipulating or moving through time like we do any aspect of 3D space.
Agreed.
But on the same token, I could say, thinking about the way sharks sense electrical signals, adding that to their sensory mechanisms could be an interesting parallel, because it does provide an additional level of awareness of the space around them in a way that we can't understand.
Right. And I think that I think there are a lot of animals, like the way their senses are, maybe it could be similarly, comparable to that. Whereas they're all we're trying to say here's this shift, here's that shift, but it's not nearly, it's still never going to be a big enough shift to describe, the actuality of how time is versus our perception of time. But right. I think it gets us thinking in the right. Oh yes, we don't understand this the same. We don't quite understand this the same way.
Yeah, I would agree.
One of the thoughts, one of the things I thought, it kind of made me think of humans are trichromats, and meaning we have three types of color receptors in our eye, three different types of cones, and it's blue, green, red, and most of the animals that are prey for tigers are dichromats, so they only have two color receptors, red and green, and that's why tigers are still camouflaged, because as a dichromat you would see basically the tiger being stripes of maybe black and green, whereas we see black and orange because we have that third receptor. And I saw a representation of what dichromats see, how dichromats see tigers, and I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense. They are not brightly colored to their prey. And then there's a small percentage of women that are tetrachromats, and they have four types of cones in their eye, and it's only women that are that way because it's a genetic trait that's on the X chromosome, and I think it's recessive, so it has to be on both X's, and since men don't have two X chromosomes, well, a man can never be a tetrachromat, which could be problematic in a marriage when a wife asks her husband, which one of these colors do you prefer? And they both look the same to him. It's not his fault in that case. Yes, there's probably a lot that he's done to make her feel like that he just doesn't care, but it might be that it wasn't his fault. And maybe he didn't care because there is no perceivable difference.
It's a long way to make a science joke for a running stereotype.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do the long joke. I'm all about the long. I'm a big fan of the long joke. I think that's why I love when comedians circle back, because I feel like it's kind of a version of the long joke. So, any other? We were talking about time, and then we took a divergence there. But any other thoughts or comments about time travel paradox? Is it paradoxes? It's the worst hand you can have in poker.
What's the worst hand? Or that is paradoxes is the worst hand? Is that what you were saying?
A paradox, 2 2s. No, that's actually wrong. That's the worst. That's the worst winning hand that you can have in poker. Is I've heard it called a paradox because the 2s look like ducks, and so it's a pair of ducks. So paradox.
Huh. I actually haven't heard that.
Yeah. The worst hand you can have in poker is a 2 and a 7 because it's the two lowest values that you can have that don't create a straight. That you can't get a straight from.
An ace and an 8 is also often referred to as a dead man's hand.
Similar reason you can't get an inside. Well, you certainly can't get an inside straight, but the ace could be down. The ace could be high.
Yeah, the only reason it's not the worst hand is because of the ace.
Yeah. So why is it's just called a dead man's hand? Because it's a pretty bad hand.
That's my understanding. I know I've heard it referred to that way, and I never really dug into why.
I've heard the Three of Kings called the Alabama Night Riders.
I can understand that.
I used to know. Yeah, I was gonna say I used to know a number of, because like two kings are pocket cow, or if you get dealt two kings, pocket cowboys. There was one that was, I think, three of a kind of queens was. See, the word queer is no longer used. Well, typically not. It's been taken back by the queer community as a way that they describe themselves, and it's no longer rude. But I've heard it used in a derogatory way for three queens. But there was something else. I think jacks have a thing. And I think there are a number of card hand names.
This is reminding me I really need to quit being a procrastinator and organize a poker game. Because now I have actually, so I've got those metal chips. Did I send you a link to those?
Yeah, you did.
Yeah, so I've ordered some additional to have plenty of the chips themselves. But they made the bars. You know how a lot of times you'll have the like bar style used as a higher denomination. Mm-hmm. So I ordered a handful of those just to have them because they're neat. I mean, who doesn't love the clink of metal?
It's lovely.
Yeah. And when I did that, I went ahead and ordered a table runner so that it has,
oh, cool.
You know, I mean, it's just to protect the table at this point with all the metal chips and everything. But it's nice to have something that goes along with it. And so I've got everything I need. I just need to actually quit procrastinating and put it together.
Yeah, that would be fun. That made me think. The larger, what do you call the larger chips? The bar type. Does that have a name?
I'm sure it does. I actually didn't know. I was about to look it up.
I remember from Casino Royale. Now I can't remember if Bond. I think at the intermission, like they take a break in the middle of I think they take a 1 hour break in the middle of the game, which is lovely because they've probably been playing for 6 hours, something like 4 hours. But I remember Bond had just won a hand, and when they take the break, or he wins big, and I think he takes someone out, and that's when they have the break, and he tosses the dealer 2 of those bars type chips. And I was like, whoa, that guy, I can't remember if it was like he just tipped him $500,000 or $1 million or €1 million. I can't remember what the denomination was, but a lot of money, man. Like that guy, like if he gets a tip like that once a year, dude is like set.
I'm sure it also depends on the game, because you could technically scale values if you need to. Now, obviously,
right.
You're just using chips most of the time if you're doing that. But I could see in a kind of a mid-tier casino maybe where you might have those plaques designate, like $100 or $1,000, something that's not in that, $500,000 or $250,000 realm.
Yeah. Well, I just remember when I was playing, when I played poker, people were like, okay, what are these? And I was like, when we didn't play for money, when we just played to play, there was a point where I didn't even tell people there was no number assignment. It was like this color was double of that color and this color was double of that color and so forth.
Yeah, we've played that way before too.
Just doubling the power was a thing. So
I sent you a link. They just call them high value plaques.
Oh, that works.
Yeah.
Those are nice.
Yeah, when I saw them, they had a sale on them. I don't know, it's been a few weeks for whatever reason. And so I went ahead and bought I think I bought 20. Again, I'm not going to use many of them, but it was just nice to add to the collection.
I was going to say, I think Casino Royale, I mean, let me just say the poker part of Casino Royale and Rounders, I really enjoyed. I think those are just, I thought Well, I've never played poker in that kind of setting, but I have to believe that that is a relatively accurate representation of how, or at least maybe Rounders is. I don't know. I just enjoyed.
Yeah, I think both do a pretty good job. I even think Maverick, if you remember
I
the
do.
old one, even think it did a decent job of portraying the way the cards themselves were played.
The original or the one where Mel Gibson is the.
Both, actually.
I don't think I've seen the original, but I've seen the Mel Gibson one.
Yeah, they certainly added more comedic elements than you would expect, but I
Oh
think
my
that
god!
for the actual play, I think it was decently representative.
I love Danny Glover's cameo.
Yeah.
So good. That was so clever. I'm so glad they did that. It was delightful. Uh, I thought Rounders was pretty funny as well.
It was. I enjoyed it quite a bit.
That movie was. I haven't ranked favorite movies in a while, but that one was consistent in my top 5 favorite movies.
I need to watch it again. It's been a while since I've watched it. I went back and watched the 2 Now You See Me movies not too long ago and forgot how much I enjoyed them.
Now You See Me. I think Becca was watching one of those recently. Does that have Michael Cera? Not Michael Cera. Danny. Is it Danny? Jesse Eisenberg. That's who it is.
Yes.
So there's one. Is there only 2? No, there's 3.
The third one is either in production or it may have just released. I don't know. I think it's coming.
Yeah. November. So I watched a bit of one of them. I don't know, and then I think Becca was telling me that she didn't. The second one wasn't as. It was getting a bit too much.
I think it depends on what you're in it for. But I can see why someone would say that for sure. Like I think they did a good job with it, but it's because I liked the more, I'm going to say theatrical elements, like thinking about it as though I was a viewer of the public aspects. The second one makes a lot more sense, but it focuses on more of the stuff that you wouldn't see as a public viewer of their shows, if that makes sense.
I think so. So that makes me want to ask you if you've seen the show Sneaky Pete.
I do not think so.
It's currently on Netflix and Amazon Prime. It's good. It was the reason I ask is because the first season they don't really do any. There's no card playing. There's really no card playing scenes like you would see in like Rounders or Maverick or even there's about as much card playing in it as Ocean's 11, but it was a good movie, and it was Bryan Cranston was one of the writers and creators, or he and another guy made it, and he actually he's in the first season with but not credited, so it's really good. The main character is portrayed by Giovanni Ribisi.
I'll say I'll add it to the list. I don't know how quick I'll get to it though.
It's a pretty short run. It's only 3 seasons. It's 30 episodes. I haven't finished it, but it's been good. I've enjoyed. I think part of the way. I think I've got 2 more episodes in the second season, so I've enjoyed the first and the second season, and it's kind of nice because you can. No, they pretty much go into each other, but yeah, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah, we already had a bad track record with being able to watch stuff, and that has derailed significantly over the past couple of months. Just because timing wise, it's one of those things where if I'm having to wait on someone else to watch, then it's just not happening. And then I haven't been rowing as much because I've been putting more time in at the gym. So I haven't caught up on as much of the individual stuff either. So
that's good.
Yeah, we're at a point where it's time to kind of level set schedules anyway, because I don't need to beat myself up to train as much as I did. like I'm back toward a point where I feel like I've regained at least parity with where I was before the surgery. There's still
Oh,
some
that's good.
things that I have, some trouble with, or things I can't do as well, but like general timing isn't off like it was. And so now it's more, I should probably, train somewhere between 3 and 4 times a week and not, 6, maybe even 7 times a week. So there'll be some scaling back of time in the gym to actually allow proper recovery and mix in some other stuff again before long.
Well, I think there's a great segue here to. Um, you're gonna have to help me with what this project is called.
Project-Jiujiteiro.
Oh man, I think I would have gotten that, but I was being a little bit chicken.
So Jiu-Jiteiro is technically the Portuguese for a jiu-jitsu practitioner, but it actually translates into more of a jiu-jitsu fanatic. Um,
Okay.
and it's used interchangeably that way as well. But I had purchased the domain a little over a year ago with plans for a different project that we started and ran into some snags, and we still plan to go back to and revisit. But in the meantime, I decided to make it my own kind of umbrella, if you will. So Project-Jiujiteiro will encompass other things over time. Right now, what it essentially includes is a single course that I created called Beyond the Belt. So that's the reason I also have it labeled that way. It's because Project-Jiujiteiro will be the umbrella section of the company, if you will. And so MA Journey will become a part of what Project-Jiujiteiro does, since it ties in well with that concept. So eventually I'll kind of merge that branding together. They'll still obviously remain, like I'm not going to change the pricing structure of the app at this point. But that's my vision for that project includes expansion into other courses and things to also help supplement that journey.
Nice, nice. I haven't had a chance to look at it. Okay, one, your website looks really nice. Like, I mean, I've been to it many times, and I've always thought it looks nice. But I feel like there's something. Is there something different that was there?
I've cleaned it up a little bit
Yeah, yeah.
because I had a separate portfolio page that was like the first thing you would land on. And then as I have expanded with some of these other things, I decided a more cohesive and simple landing page experience was the better start, if you will. And so when I did that, I decided to kind of shuffle a few things where the portfolios are still there, but you have to go to the creative services to see links to them instead of it being a separate portfolios page and then a separate creative services page. And, it silos the different areas of interest better.
It's very cool. It's nice. I was gonna say all the screenshots of on MA Journey. That's awesome. Like that's really awesome.
Yeah, I tried to make it as coherent a narrative as I could without having to write, pages and pages of text, because nobody wants to read that much text.
Right. And what I was just gonna say, it's like it's not. You can look at it. You can click on them. You can get an idea of what. I mean, it looks like you have screenshots from every possible screen that you could see in the app or close to it.
Not everyone. I mean, there are a lot of things that I don't tell the narrative real well there that I still am trying to kind of figure out the best way to rectify that. Because one of the big things that you don't really get a sense for is the technique library itself. So as you build it out, what that actually means. Like you can see that something exists and it's there, but static screenshots don't really give you a proper sense of that feature. But it's also the kind of thing that I think users are going to tell people about if it's actually worthwhile. Like I use it, but I use it because I developed it as the app I wanted to use.
Right.
So we'll see if I come up with a way to rework that a little bit better. But aside from that, every high level feature has some level of representation for sure.
Yeah, it's really good. Is it this data like the you've got some bar graphs and some line graphs? Or is this your data or?
It's sort of my data. I used some of my data as a baseline and then added some stuff as well just to flesh out when I was creating the screenshots. So
Gotcha.
a lot of it, some of it is real data. We'll put it that way.
So I actually didn't realize that the bar is not a bar. There's, I guess, in the main part of the app, there's a bar, and I thought it was a bar, but it's the belt. I didn't realize it was a belt.
Yeah,
that makes so much more. I was gonna say, these screenshots make it so like I don't know much about Brazilian jiu-jitsu, but then I saw one of these screenshots and I was like, oh, now the bar makes so much sense. It's not a bar.
yeah. I think most people probably wouldn't be too confused when they see the representation. One of
No,
the
I don't
things
think
that
so
I do
either.
have to do, though, that I know is a lacking mechanism, I've got to come up with a better way to allow other belt systems to easily be used without requiring me to develop them and add them to the app.
Mm. It sounds like you're getting into Lauren Brichter territory with when he um now I can't remember WordPress. There are no graphics in WordPress.
Yeah, technically these aren't graphics either. It's all created
Right.
with Swift UI.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it does make sense that I should allow a user the ability to at least pick and choose from some options and then set, like, yeah, as a user, I feel like I should be able to say there are 12 ranks or 14 ranks and these are their colors. Now maybe other aspects of the representation I still have to do in some way to, support them, but there are enough different styles with enough different belt structures that if I really want it to be more ubiquitous, I've got to figure out the best way to rewrite that component and actually have it work.
I want to ask some more questions about your app, but I don't want to get too far away from Project-Jiujiteiro, and I want to make sure that I don't do that. So
I think it ties in well enough. I didn't have much to say about the course other than it just feels good to have it done,
mm-hmm.
because it was something I had planned to do probably 4 or 5 months ago, because I was going to try to get it closer in line to when the app was launched anyway, and then just never got to it. And so getting the studio corner set up helped facilitate that better because I actually had a place to set up to record.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm doing a quick look at I'm looking at the screenshot of year over year with the year over year training comparison, the line graph of that, and I'm like, oh man, it's kind of autobiographical for year 2025.
Yeah.
So, now what I was going to ask was, are you working on an iOS 26 visual overhaul, or have you needed to do much work for that?
So
If you are,
the way it's written now, it looks the same on 26. So I don't have to make any changes
gotcha.
to keep the same aesthetic that I have developed. That's not to say that I don't want to make some changes. But because the changes haven't messed with functionality, I haven't put the effort into it yet. Instead, there are two side projects that I've been putting the effort into. One being the course and getting all of that together, and the other being the timer app for the Apple TV, because I kind of put it on the shelf after I published it, but I've got to get back to it to create additional sounds to make it useful out of the gate. Because right now you have one series of sounds that you can use them in different combinations, but that's really about it. And so I need to have a little more variety, and I just haven't taken the time to sit down and create timer sounds. But that'll be the next thing on my list so that I can get those bundled in. And then that app at that point becomes, in my mind, fully useful with the basic functionality. Like right now I would classify it as MVP, and the what it needs to actually be a truly useful app is just a wider range of available sounds out of the gate.
Yeah. Because I feel like, once you have the core functionality, that's the thing that people are going to be like, oh, can it make, this sound or that sound? It makes me think of, there's an episode the first season from the first season of that 70s show where Red's a salesman at a appliance store, and it's like he gets frustrated at people who are coming like, well, does it come in this color? And he's like, hey, I mean, you need to, that's the last thing you need. That's the last thing you need to care about for your blender, and it's like the first thing that all the customers care about. So, and I don't mean to be disparaging to customers, because like, if all things being equal, color is incredibly important.
Yeah, the interesting thing with the app is that at least it does have the ability, like if you want to take the time to create your own sound, you can go ahead and send it to it and use it.
That's good.
It doesn't require me to add sounds for it to be functional. But if you don't want to go through that step, you just want, say you have 2 or 3 different Apple TVs that you want to run this on in a gym, and you want a different end timer for each one. Right now, that's not easily doable.
Gotcha. So that
limits
really good.
Well, but that limits the initial usefulness out of the gate if you're trying it, because then you look at it and it's like, well, there are only these couple of sounds for the timer. Like that's not useful for my scenario today, regardless of whether you could modify that with 10 minutes worth of work. I know the additional customization will be the piece that people enjoy later once they have it, in use and going. And oh, you know what? It'd be fun to do like a Halloween sound for the month of October.
Yeah, something spooky.
Yeah.
No, that's a very good. It comes down to marketing. That's a really good marketing feature.
Did you have any other questions on the app?
I don't think so. I have been scrolling up and down on this page and just really appreciating, all the work that went into this, and just I wish all developers put this kind of. A lot of the good developers that I use, but it's like, this is really good.
It's been real interesting figuring out how to walk the line between useful versus overwhelming. Because I can also, if I wasn't an app person and I looked at the page, I also didn't want it to be so much that it was, I don't need to look because there's just too much here kind of thing.
No, I get that. I feel like the sort of user that is looking for something like this is going to appreciate this kind of presentation.
Yeah, the little bit of feedback that I've gotten has indicated that for sure. I don't have lots and lots of users at this point, but I have a few, and I've had a few that have sent messages in. One of them asking about the different belt systems. A couple of them just sending in feedback saying, hey, they loved it. It's great to hear.
As a person who doesn't practice jiu-jitsu, was part of the beta testing and just, messed around with it. Like, I look at this and I'm like, oh, it's kind of like, oh, seeing an app like, seeing a presentation like this is like, oh, it makes me want to practice jiu-jitsu so I can download this app. Like, there's a number of apps that are like that. It's like, oh, I wish I did this thing so I could use that app. I think Coda and now Nova were one of them. I actually probably could use those. But yeah,
I actually use Nova still. I don't really do a whole lot with it, but the HTML for the show notes that I embed into the episode, I do in Nova.
Nice. I would buy everything from Panic if I don't, because it's like I have to. What's the word I'm looking for? I have to be somewhat judicious, a little bit, judicious with what I have. But
yeah, the nice thing I think from me, even though I don't use it for some of the other things, all of the things that I might want to use it for, or if I might want to pull up another type of file just to see the syntactical coloring and highlighting kind of thing, it's easy enough to do with Nova. like, even though I'm not having to work in it all the time, it gives me a good, you know what, I want to look at this differently. Let me pull it up here.
Does Nova support Vim key bindings?
I think so. I
I'm messing
haven't
with it again.
Yeah, I haven't looked. I haven't had a reason to mess with it in a while from that regard, but I think it does. I think I remember seeing something about it. If not directly, then I think there was a plugin for it.
I'm such a fan of Vim key bindings. Probably more than, I don't know. I'll say this: of all the people I listen to podcasts who do anything in this realm, there's only one person who has, I wouldn't even say champion Vim key bindings, but just have been like, yes, I used Vim key bindings, and that was Merlin Mann. But nobody else really does. So, are you familiar with Pan?
Go ahead.
You go ahead. I feel like I know where you're going. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, I don't know that I have anything that I actually have changed the key bindings for since leaving my previous employer. Like that's what I was thinking about it. It's like I don't know that I've either used Vim directly or I've used some other tool, but I haven't done that much really in the command line in a while, as you would expect given the nature of my shift.
Yeah. So I feel like if I shifted, to something that didn't work, that didn't use the command line, I wouldn't use it that much either. I'd use it for this and that, when you rsync your backups, do you use the command line or something else?
I use the command line. I recently, I think we even talked about it briefly. I went ahead and rebuilt my backups using Carbon Copy Cloner, predominantly because it can detect drive mounts natively, so I don't have to go trigger anything. And so when I rebuilt my backup structure, I wanted it to do an automated backup every Sunday. But if drives weren't available for whatever reason, the next time I plugged them in, I wanted it to run that backup. And that's just a nice byproduct of using it.
Yeah. And Carbon Copy Cloner. Long time since I've had heard that name.
Yeah, the reason I specifically chose it is because it's using rsync under the hood.
Do you know what SuperDuper uses?
I don't know for sure.
That was the one that I ended up jumping on, but I don't know if it's still supported. Their website's still up. I don't know how. Well, I guess.
And actually, now that I think about it, I don't know for sure that Carbon Copy Cloner still uses rsync under the hood. They could have easily changed to something else by now. But I know at one point they did use rsync for a large part of their processes.
Huh, this is fantastic. SuperDuper looks like it's been around since 2002. At least the website is saying 2002. And it's on 3.1, and the features that it lists are things like it supports dark mode and various things like that. I mean, it fully supports Sequoia. So it is. It looks like it's still in active development.
So I went ahead and looked it up real quick just to confirm. CCC does still use rsync as its essential backbone for backups.
Nice.
Yeah, for network backups, it uses rsync over SSH.
Man, those are just two solid technologies that you just.
Yeah, I mean, it's solid. It's what I was doing with the scripting, and then I realized. So part of why I decided to rebuild my backup stuff was because I realized I had one loop that was not backing up in the order and way that I wanted it to. And it was my fault. Like, I obviously missed the changing a variable in the command line. And so if I was already going to have to double check all of the different lines that I had, it's like, well, let me rebuild them in something else so that I can also do a couple of other things and modifications. And then as I was looking at it, it was like, well, I'd really like to not have to just think about it anymore and know that it's going to run and notify me if there's a problem. And that's what led me back to CCC. Yeah,
I think it, just from like a cursory glance at the websites, CCC might be a little more feature rich.
There's a lot it can do for sure, but I haven't looked at Super Duper to really compare. But I do
Yeah,
know
Super
that
Duper takes me back to the Genius Bar days.
I do know that Carbon Copy Cloner also does drive imaging and things of that nature if you want to, which was what it was originally developed for. Like
Right.
the backup functionality is just an added nicety on top of it. I just don't tend
Oh
to use
yeah.
it for the rest of the feature set. I use it just for being able to specify backups.
I remember talking about both of these just as like, oh yeah, here, create an external backup or create a, copy your whole drive so that you have, and then, do Delta backup so that you can, if ever you need to, well, one, you have a backup, but also you can boot from the external drive. And that's before the T2 chip.
Yes.
What I was going to say before we got down this backup road, I was looking at Panic's website because I like Nova, but and maybe we've talked about this, and I apologize, but have you seen their game Firewatch?
I have. I have not played it, but I know they've also released a couple of other games, and I haven't looked that close at them either, and I need to. I just haven't.
Well, I thought Firewatch looked so cool. One of it being it's like it hits on a lot of the things that I really like. One, it takes place in out west in the wilderness, and it's beautiful. And then also, um, uh, you're in a Firewatch tower, and I think Firewatch towers are some of the coolest things out in the world. They're no longer in use. I think there is one Firewatch tower currently somebody works in the entire U.S. because everything can be done through satellite imagery at this point. There's simply satellites are far superior to a Firewatch tower, but there are some Firewatch towers that have been renovated so that you can go stay in them, and they're now there's one I think in Georgia that's an Airbnb, and I'm like I went to look to see its availability. It is booked solid, man. Well, maybe it's for any weekend. I don't think there's any weekend availability for the next 6 months, but it looks like a really cool place to stay. But I just really think Firewatch towers are beautiful, and I watched the trailer for the game Firewatch, and I was like, this could be a movie. And so I didn't really want to play it, but I ended up finding someone who did a run through of the game on YouTube, and I watched it over the course of like, I don't know, a week, because it was like a 3-hour run through, and I was like, I couldn't handle more than, I don't know, mostly like 20 minutes of watching someone play the game is enough. And I would keep subtitles on so that I could skip to where there's actually like, let me understand the story. And it was a pretty good story. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, so this would have been what, about 25 years ago now. When I was with the volunteer fire department, there was a Firewatch tower. Well, I don't know if it would technically be a Firewatch tower, but it was and specifically used by the Forestry Service in the event of a fire to climb and be able to provide on the ground additional information from a closer proximity than what you would do otherwise. But those were still in use then, at least. But that would have also been prior to real-time satellite imagery being a convenient thing, so it would make sense. But it would be neat. Where's the one that you were talking about that's an Airbnb? What part of Georgia?
I think it's got to be North Georgia, but I'll double check.
It'd be something I'd be curious about as well. But then again, I love the views from different towers.
Yes, I think Firewatch towers are just really, really beautiful. The other thing that's nice about a lot of them is it's like they're, getting to them is part of the adventure. So
I'd say both getting to them and getting up to them.
Yes. Does Ringgold, Georgia sound familiar?
It does.
Okay. That's where it is.
Okay. It might be something I look into. Not anytime real soon, but I don't think we'll have much travel the rest of this year.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything planned for this year.
We so last year Emily's parents said that it was nice for us to have come up for Thanksgiving like we did, and so we're planning to do the same type thing. I don't know if we're going to do, the past 4 years we've done a trip around Christmas as kind of a tradition. I don't know if we're going to do that this year. We'll have to see.
Oh, okay.
Part of it's just because now everything we kind of made the trips for, other than just a different location, we have access to here. So,
yeah.
I don't know. We'll see. And part of it's just trying to be somewhat responsible with everything increasing in cost.
Oh my God. I thought everything was decreasing in costs for the past 7 months. Am I wrong?
I think it all depends on what you decide to look at.
Well, I mean, the price of eggs and milk, they've all gone down over the last 7 months.
Yeah, there other stuff has risen in its place though. Like that, it's been a fairly.
I thought everything has gone up. I was being an ass.
I know. I was just saying that the things that have gone down actually have been very easily countered by the things that have gone up. But there are some things that have gone down. I can't be a complete ass and say everything has gone up.
Well, here's the thing. It didn't matter because the cost of eggs and the price of fuel was never going to be...
It was never determined by the things that people wanted to blame them on.
Right.
Yeah.
But then there's been, well, it's been interesting. I guess we're gonna go here now. It's been interesting to see the last maybe round of tariffs that were supposed to come into play just have no effect on the stock market, because the first several rounds that just caused the stock market to go take a dive, just they're like, oh, guess what? It's not going to mean anything right now. So that's been interesting to see recently.
Yeah, the thing that's hilarious is that at this point, everybody expects him to chicken out.
Yep.
And pause. And so, like, there have been 2 or 3, I would say, smaller companies who have posted things about, we really were trying to hold off on modifying prices, but these particular tariffs have actually now gone into effect. And so there will be this line item added to sales that are like referencing Trump tariff and what percentage it is, kind of thing. So it has been interesting to see that as well.
Call it out.
Yeah, I absolutely will if anything impacts me directly. I don't have a lot else, but I did want to touch on a couple of other things, one being kind of follow-up and one just being a reminder. So I know I had mentioned when I finally got Renegade Noble off the ground that I was planning to do a monthly episode, and I didn't really know what that cadence was going to look like. And so I've decided I'm going to target the last Friday of each month for that episode release, just because it's an arbitrary choosing that I'd like. And so with that, the next episode will be coming out this Friday as we record, which would be the last Friday in August. And so I was just going to mention it because, I probably have at least 1 or 2 people who follow the channel at this point, and they probably also follow this if they follow the channel. So that way the information's out there.
I'm subscribed and I selected the bell for all updates, so
it is certainly appreciated. I just need to so one thing I did do, a little bit of behind the scenes, well, it'll be visible once the episode launches. I did go ahead and create a playlist that I will add each quote-unquote official full episode to, so that it will have those easily accessible, because it provides me the structure to go ahead and do one-off random shit, for lack of a better word.
Not
I
an totally
episode.
Understand.
Even though I have no plan for it yet, it's just I thought about it as I got this one out there, and it's like, no, this makes the perfect sense for the perfect time to do it.
Right.
And so I'm trying to lay the groundwork responsibly. We'll see if it works out or if I end up changing it all anyway.
I think that's a good idea. I'm familiar enough with YouTube and having looked at the YouTube interface on being pretty familiar with it on 3 different devices, the Apple TV, the iPhone, and the website. And I think that's a good idea there.
Yeah,
it's good thinking.
I certainly had that thought as I was putting this one together. So, but the one thing that I really am looking forward to, this one has the production quality that I like, as opposed to the quote-unquote episode 0 that we talked about, where I intentionally made some choices that I didn't want to make or would not have. I made intentional choices on the way I produced it that I was not planning to replicate. That's the nice way to say it. And so this one is more the style that this is how I would replicate, or this would be the way they would typically look. The only difference with this one that's coming up, normally I would try to have intersplicing B-roll of stuff that's me specifically, but the topic of this first episode will make sense as to why the B-roll is stock footage instead. So,
okay.
That's the one thing that I'll give away before it launches. By the time anybody hears this, it'll be available anyway, so it really doesn't matter.
Right. It's only for me. It's only for me.
Yeah. So I will give the title. I decided the very first episode needed to be about being a decent person, because that's just been too big of a thing over the past few years, especially with the show. And so there's no B-roll of me being a decent person. And so I decided I would just intersperse B-roll for my edits that I would make.
That's a good idea.
Yeah.
I like that.
And the other thing is I did want to at least follow up on the Apple TV remote thing. I don't actually have any follow-up on it because I didn't actually do it. It's still listed in my to-do things to investigate. But I do have it notated, and I do have the reminder here in the show notes again. And so I will have to remember to do it.
I put that in there for because I was going to ask you, but I did confirm that it is called the Siri remote, as you said, and I put in a bit of copy from the website. It says a touch-enabled clickpad, easily swipe through episodes, scenes, or frames with an intuitive circular movement. Turn your TV on or off, change the input to Apple TV 4K, and control the volume. So frame by frame. And I feel like I remember them demoing that.
And they did. And it looked good because it was actually responsive. Like if you circled the remote quickly, it would fly through the frames pretty quickly. And I at one point I was able to duplicate it briefly.
It's gotta be for downloaded content or a super fucking fast connection.
Maybe. I don't remember what I duplicated it with. I figured out the functionality at one point after they announced it, but I knew that it would not be widely adopted in other apps immediately. So I only tried it in the Apple TV stuff. And then that's where, as we were talking about it last week, I don't know if maybe I disabled it somewhere when I was doing a bunch of other stuff because of accidental input and everything else. And so I do need to go check and see if it's supported in any other app or if there's a setting for it. But I certainly have not been able to duplicate it. I haven't intentionally tried, but I have not been able to duplicate it otherwise.
What makes me a little miffed about that? Not that it does or doesn't work, because it's that's I guess there might be a use case for that. I just haven't had one in a long time, but I do remember when I don't remember what version of Mac OS this was, because it was Mac OS, but they updated to QuickTime 10 and made it a part of there was no Pro version that you had to pay for, because there was basically a light. QuickTime 7 there was QuickTime 7 and then QuickTime 7 Pro, which was a paid upgrade, unless you found a key somewhere. And with QuickTime 10, it came with OS. There was no paid upgrade, but they added some features that were really nice, like the trimming, but because you had to have QuickTime Pro to trim with the previous version. But one of the things that I've really loved about QuickTime Pro 7 was that you could, I don't remember what the key was, but you could use a key on the keyboard and go frame by frame, forward or backwards. And I love that. And you could set, it's like, okay, this is where I want to cut the front, I want to cut everything before this off. You could set that and then move frame by frame. And then you could set the second one, the end of the clip that you wanted to make, and move that frame by frame. And it was such a nice feature. And they added all of that trimming to QuickTime 10, but they took away, you did not have the ability to move frame by frame. And I just, you could still have QuickTime 7 Pro on your computer if that's, if you needed some of those features. But I was just like, I was really miffed about that. And then for them to at least claim that that's a thing in Apple TV, and like, fuck you.
I remember that transition well because that was that point where I quit using QuickTime for anything. Like I went straight to, all right, fine, I will just bring it into Final Cut Pro and I'll do what I need to do there.
Yeah. Final Cut Pro 7, or was it 9?
Oh, we could have a very different discussion there, because the best version of Final Cut was Final Cut Studio, and then when they
before
did
10,
away, and then when they moved to the combination of Final Cut Pro being essentially everything, but then you had motion and compressor, and that was it. That was when it went downhill for a while.
Yeah, I remember that was 2010. I remember that.
No, I will say, in their defense, they did eventually build it back to a pretty phenomenal suite of tools.
They did that with everything.
Yeah. Well, except Aperture.
Yeah, well, it's coming, Pixelmator.
I think it to be more Photomator than Pixelmator.
Yeah, they're going to put that all in one app.
Oh, I'm sure they will. And I'm going to be pissed, and I'm not going to use it. At
it's
this
not going to be great. But just think, 10 years from now, it'll be exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah. It really, the Aperture thing pisses me off a lot, because if they had just stayed the course, it would such a phenomenal tool, and it was definitely better than Lightroom for general organization. Adobe has done a good job with the tool set in Lightroom that I don't think Apple would have done, which I think, like the acquisition of Pixelmator, might actually have been an offset for. The problem is that I don't think Apple is capable of delivering on the same scale any longer. Okay, they're just too far behind.
I don't even know that. Well, they are far behind, but it's just not Tim Cook's Apple. That is, It is not a. It's not a tent. It used to be a tentpole. And it no longer is, and that's why the last new release of Aperture came out in 2009. A couple of years before, less than 2 years before, the organization began a significant change. And while I think there were some good changes that happened, software has not fared well. So which leads me to. I thought about this, and I saw the first screenshot from, I think it was iOS 26. I don't think it was macOS. That I was like, oh, that's not going to be something that I'm going to dislike this. At least this little part. And it was like the corners of something. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to like that. Because, I've heard people talk. I'd heard people talk about it on podcasts. But it was the first one that I saw. And I was like, oh. As much as what I've seen so far that looks good, there's going to be stuff that I'm not going to like, and there's a certain expectation that I grew to have with Apple software that hasn't been around, has in some cases slowly, in some cases quickly been dying off, and I don't foresee it correcting in the way that I think that it should until there's a significant leader shakeup. We have a number of different ways set up for you to get in touch with us to provide feedback, ask questions, or just comment in about something we've discussed.
You can hit us up on Twitter or Instagram at untitled_hosts, or shoot an email over to untitled.hosts@gmail.com.
or get in touch directly with Jesse at jthart.com, or get in touch with me, John, via telepathy.
If you would like to support our work or are interested in listening to our new after show feed, head over to patreon.com/theUntitledPodcast and take a look at the options we have set up.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed the show.
And we hope to connect with more of you as we continue this journey.
That's a wrap. I can agree with that. Like I was just trying to think through. I paused only because I was thinking about the little bit that I've used the OS, and I think that's part of why I haven't done as much with the app, because it's one, nothing broke functionality, so I have that going for me. But two, I haven't cared for the few things that I've kind of looked through on the phone. I'm not saying that they're bad. It's just it's an adjustment. And I just don't feel like making the adjustment in a development perspective. You know, let me use it in my normal day-to-day routines and get a feel for it and what I like and dislike. And then I will come back to, all right, let me adopt these aspects of it because I like those. And then for these things I don't like, let me ignore them or find a different way to address it. Which... I mean, I think that makes sense in the long run as well. I think as a developer, even though I still will claim I am not for many reasons, but as a developer, I would much rather my app be stable and functional, and I can choose when to make aesthetic changes than to have to do so as a result of something Apple does. And so I do like that I am positioned in that way going into this app. Or into this era of iOS. Because in my mind, it means I did something somewhat right. You know, like if everything is natively coded and works natively, even if it just doesn't look the same as the rest of the operating system, that's perfect. That's a 100% perfectly functional, well-rounded application. Because that means that everything that I might want to look at too is purely aesthetic.
Yes, and that's a good place to be.
Yeah,
you get to make your changes on at your
but
leisure,
it has had the byproduct of I just haven't been interested in playing with the new OS because I'm not using it on my primary phone, and I want to get a feel for what I like and don't like within the realm of how I use the device first. Which sure, it means I'm going to be slower to adopt aesthetic changes. But I think it means that when I do, or what I do choose to adopt, is going to be more well thought out than what I would do if I were looking at it today.
Yeah, that makes sense.